listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey folks, welcome to the program. It's Thursday night. Sorry, we are 8 minutes, almost 9 minutes late. Somebody accidentally unplugged our internet and we rebooted it and then it got unplugged again, all about a minute before 9 o'clock. Well, I take that back. About a minute before 9 o'clock, internet got unplugged and then we're waiting. It takes our box about 5 minutes to reboot. And then I went out there at about 3 minutes after and said, why is the internet still off? And I took a look at it and it came unplugged again because the box was falling out of the wall. So there you go. We're here. I'm still resetting a couple of things to make sure that I can see the chat. And there we go. There. See, you're getting a little feedback right now because I had to go over there. I got to do the pop-out chat so I can see it. Boom. There we go. Everything just came back up on my computer a minute ago. Welcome to the Intrepid radio program. This is your host, Scotty Roberts. And you are watching via my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And also you can catch this show in its rebroadcast over on the Odyssey Radio Network, ODYSY1.com. The only reason I paused there was I wouldn't wait. This show is not rebroadcasting over there. This show will not rebroadcast over there. You'll only catch it here in the archives. And so they're still playing some old archives of ours, seeing as we had over 500 shows up over there over a course of nearly 2 years. They've got all those backlog of shows that they've been replaying over there. But you can go over to Odyssey Radio, look at the schedule, and see all the times during the day when this show plays over there. There you go. Woo! And Master Finn, good to see you. Yep, who's coming with us? Anyone? Not sure where you're going, but welcome to the show. Good to have you here, Master Finn. Barbie D, yes, we're live. And I hope you caught all of that, everybody. We are now live. We got our whole internet got unplugged. So pardon that. And it all happened right before 9 o'clock, literally 9:59 or 8:59 p.m. 9:59 if you're out on the East Coast. And so it's cold up here, Morgan Snow. Yes, it is. See, I'm wearing a hoodie today. I had my big woolly sweater on yesterday. Tomorrow night, Friday night, it's going to be 37 degrees in the evening. And so we have a big cold smash coming through here right now, howling down out of Canada on top of us. And whereas I remember standing on the patio 3 days ago, and the temperature, and of course it gets warmer on our patio because we get some southern sun on that. The thermometer on the patio was 98 degrees, and it was incredibly humid. All of a sudden, we got hit by this Arctic blast, if you will. I think they call it an Arctic blast in the winter. In the summer, it's called a cold front. So we got that coming through, and we had rain all day yesterday and today. So it's cold out right now. Right now, it's something like I think like 43 degrees outside or something like that, which is kind of chilly. It might even be colder than that. Nah, I think that's about right for right now. So good to see you all, Morgan Snow. That's an answer to your question. Durwood, good to see you here tonight. And I think I said hi to Susie Q. And hey, Catherine Sanders, good to see you. And let's see what else we got in here. It's always nice doing the live programs when I can say hi to everybody at the beginning of the show. And Elderberry, good to see you. And who else we got in here tonight? Teresa, good to see you. Ryan Gale. Yeah, it was Russian hackers. That's exactly what it was. It was those pernicious Russians. Doug Stack, good to see you. Yeah, somebody unplugged it an hour into the future. Yeah, I stated the hour wrong. It was 8:59, not 9:59. So 1 minute before this show starts, it was accidentally unplugged. Somebody, probably the sexier part of and better part of my marital bliss, accidentally unplugged it when she was unplugging something else that was plugged into the huge block. You know those big blocks you get of all plugins, and they plug into the 2 sockets all together, chunk. And then this has a shelf on top of it, specifically for the purpose of the modem. Well, she reached back there, she unplugged something, and it unplugged the whole lot. And then I'm watching it. I'm coming out here. It's about 9:03. And I go out there and I look at it, and all the green lights are still blinking. I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? And then I reached down and I touched the box. I was going to make sure everything was plugged in. And the whole shelf fell out of the socket again because it hadn't been pushed all the way back in. So there you go. Blah, 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 blah. Teresa says I'm on the way. Oh, that was a while back. You had to say that. So I appreciate that everybody's concerned about me. Like I didn't die of a heart attack or fall asleep on the sofa or something like that. So thanks, everybody, for your concern. But here we are. Okay, be back soon, said Susie Q. Sure, I make it here finally, Susie Q, and you take off. Way to go. All right, Gaza, good to see you. I'm teasing you, of course, Susie. And Delaney, good to see you. You're frying mushrooms. You know, speaking of that, I saw this awesome recipe about a year ago, and I think I posted it. Maybe it was 2 years ago. I can't remember the date. Came up in my Facebook memories today, and I reposted it. And if you're on my Facebook, go scroll down a couple of posts, and you'll see this recipe. And it's a video to music. You know, dun, 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 dun. You see the hands. They're out there, and they're doing everything in fast motion. And then and it's this neat thing you make out of flour and eggs and probably a little bit of baking powder, baking soda, whichever, maybe yeast. I don't know what it was, a little tiny bit. And you mix that all up and you set it aside, your dough aside, just eggs and flour. And you start chopping all this stuff up. You do your, boil up your pasta, and they have the big pasta shells, the size of your hand. And little manicottis and stuff like that, and boiled eggs, and some kind of mixture they put into the manicotti, or stuff it into the big shells, and you put it all in, and you take this crust you made, or this dough you made, and roll it all out, and lay it in there. You line your pie pan, and you lay all this stuff down in it, and then you put your stuffed shells and everything. Then there's bunch of like sausages you put her on all along the top, and you fold it all up and you bake it. And then when you take it out of the oven, you let it cool and you flip it, take the pan off, you cut into that, and it's amazing pie. And so I've got that recipe. It's actually sitting right here. What's it called? Timpano. It's got your ricotta cheese. That's what you put into the big shells. So it's ricotta cheese. That's for the ricotta herb mixture. The filling, 2 cups of dried rigatoni, 2 cups of dried jumbo shell pasta, 2 cups of marinara sauce, olive oil for greasing the pot, of course, and 10 meatballs, 5 hard-boiled eggs, 10 slices of provolone cheese, 2 cups of caramelized onions, 8 hot Italian sausages, cooked marinara sauce for serving. It says the calories are 1,272, fat 58 grams. That's probably per slice. And blah, blah, blah. So there it is. That's my recipe list. I printed that out so I could actually go get the stuff to make this awesome pie. Does that sound good? So 10 Rocky Stoochies. Not sure what that is. Oh, I want this damn recipe, says Teresa. Teresa, go look on my Facebook page and scroll down. I'm not sure how far back it is. I just put it up either yesterday or this morning. Oh, it's only like the second one down underneath the radio announcement for today. You'll see the video. And you can... Here, hold on. we're going to do this just because it's fun to do and it's my show and I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm going to share my screen. Share screen. Boom. Boom. We're sharing screen now. Watch this. I'm going to go over to my Facebook page. Watch this thing. I'm going to give it some sound. We're going to blow it up. Here you go. Watch this, baby. Here it is. Boom, boom, boom. Chicka, chicka, cha. Eggs. You mix the eggs right there in the middle of the flour. Boom, ba, 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 da, da, da. Would you like to tango? And get da, da. Yes, Ryan Gale. Sam got a temporary job up here doing concrete work. He's just waiting on our guy to call from Dallas. Cover and rest for 30 minutes. Now this is your parsley, your Parmesan, your salt and pepper egg. You mix that. Look at that. Mix that all up. Yum, man. There you're boiling up your manicotti. Jumbo shells. Jumbo shells, not to be confused with small shells. Mix your marinara sauce in. Now watch this. Oh, you stuff your ricotta cheese mix into the large jumbo shells. Look at this, baby. Woo! Roll out your flour. Cha cha cha. Wah wah. See, I want to make this. Do do do. Look at all that. Meatballs, boiled eggs, provolone cheese, your stuffed large jumbo, your sausages. Fold the rest of that up over the top. Look at that. Cook it. 375 degrees. Cool at least 30 minutes. Flip that baby over. Look at that. Could you just bite into that? Woo! Yeah, baby. Boom, boom. There it is. Yeah. La 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 la. There we go. Let's stop sharing our screen and come back into the show. Stop the share. Boom. What'd you think of that? Would you eat that? If I made that, would you eat that? That looks awesome. So let's see what everybody's saying. It's been 3 minutes late, but I got lost on videos and blah, blah, blah. It says, Patch, I'd have been 3 minutes late, but I got lost on videos and TT. What's TT? Oh, isn't that's that Tonka Talk, TikTok. There you go. I knew what it was. I just couldn't remember the words. That'll fill you for breakfast. Yeah, that's right, Matthew. Hell yes, I'd chow that down, says Teresa. Now I'm hungry, says Barbie D. That's my job. If you're not hungry, I haven't done my job well. And Mike Yehudi, good to see you, brother. And Patchmo, good to see you. And Audrey, good to see you as well. Well, folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging on. I knew you wouldn't have banned me if I was a few minutes late, but I get, stuff like that happens. It never happens like 10 minutes before the show. It happens like 38 seconds before the show. And so thanks for sticking around, even though I was late. Had to reboot my whole internet. And twice before we got in here. That's always like 9:09 before I walked in the door here. So good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. Let's hit our topic because we are already 23 minutes into the show. And I wanted to talk about the wild, the weird, strange visions of Enoch. And I know we didn't finish up the Eve lesson, but we'll get back to that again. But I want to talk about the strange visions of Enoch. This has been sitting here on my computer desktop for 3 days, and I've been chomping to get at this. And so I wanted to get into it and talk about this. As you know, my publisher has asked me to write a book on the Book of Enoch. And with all the information floating around out there, it's sometimes hard to do all your research and then try to write something original and new. So I'm trying to think of a good angle to approach that on. They want me to get not too far into the woo, but they thought that would be fun because it's what New Page Books does now that they're owned by Red Wheel Weiser as well. New Page Books always did the weird alien stuff, and you saw the books that I've done with them before: The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, The Secret History of the Reptilians, The Exodus Reality, then several anthology books I was part of with them on lost cities of the gods and things like that. And so now they were absorbed by Red Wheel Weiser being one of the largest publishers of Western magical tradition. And so they do a lot of books on paganism, Wiccanism, Western magic, and so on. Lon Milo Duquette is one of their big authors there. And so now that they're owned by them, this is the style of book they're after. They want to find something about, have me write about the Book of Enoch that in such a way that it presents good information and solid information, but not strictly a scholarly work or a textbook or a reference book type of a work, but something that, really invites you to consider the woo side while looking at the solid, less woo side factor of it. And as we talked about, over a couple of times over the last few weeks, Enoch is a pseudepigraphal book, a pseudepigraphic book, meaning a book that's written in that period between like 200 BC and 200 AD, kind of what they called, biblically speaking, almost that intertestamental period. The last, that would be back a little bit further, like the last 300 years of the BCE and up to the time of Christ and the writings of his disciples. And so it's kind of falls in that same period. And pseudepigrapha really stands for books that are written by, they're false. The pigrapha, books that are falsely titled or saying, this is the Book of Enoch, when we know Enoch didn't write that text. I also believe some of the pseudepigraphic texts are rewrites of much older texts. If you remember, we've talked about the rabbis who, after the Babylon had come and sacked Israel in the 500s BCE, and then drags them all off to Babylon, then lets them all go 150 years later. They all go back home. They rebuild the temple, and all the rabbis go to the Library of Alexandria under the permission of Ptolemy II to rewrite the Hebrew scriptures and the Hebrew books of history. And this is where we get the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, which is basically, you pick up any standard Bible today, a King James Bible, a New American Standard Bible, a New International Version of the Bible, the New Revised Standard Edition, all these typical Bibles that are out there that are floating around churches and homes all over America and the world, frankly. That Old Testament contained in there is the Septuagint, the Greek version that was written by these rabbis at the Library of Alexandria, reconstructing the Hebrew texts. So when it comes to Enoch, he kind of occupies a sometimes very arcane world, the pseudepigrapha. It's that collection of scripture-like books, usually attributed to such ancients as Adam, the Book of Adam, the Book of Moses, or the patriarchs. But actually, it's composed, for the most part, between 200 BC and 200 AD. The accompanying lessons that we did on the pseudepigrapha and on Eve and on all of those were kind of things that gave you a general background of the pseudepigrapha. General, I'm saying. We just kind of hit on it lightly. And I'd like to focus on a single book of the pseudepigraphy, and that's the Book of Enoch for tonight. Perhaps the best known work of the collection of pseudepigraphic books. And Enoch is attributed falsely, of course, to the sixth descendant of Adam. Enoch was the father of Methuselah. Remember who Methuselah? He was the oldest man written in the Bible. Well, hi.
Where do you want me to put this?
Where do you want me to put this? Oh, look at that. Look at that, folks. My young daughter, Ellery, walked in. Here, Ellery. Say hi. You wave up there? That's what she brought me. That's for Father's Day. When is Father's Day? It's coming up sometime.
Tomorrow?
So there you go. No, I don't think it's tomorrow. So it says, I love Dad from Ellery. Very nice. Thank you, baby.
No, I just
Give me a smooch. Give me a smooch.
No.
Okay, take that. You go put that wherever you want to put that for safekeeping until Father's Day. I don't think Father's Day is for a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Dad, I just put a heart there.
I see that. Look at the heart.
I messed up a
Big
D.
black heart. Oh, she messed up the D, and so she turned it into a heart. How utterly creative. Thank you, baby. Give me a hug at least, if I don't get a kiss.
I'm just going to send it right there.
Oh. None of my kids like getting kisses. Oh, your sore shoulder. I'm sorry. Your sunburned shoulder. You can go in on the sink in the bathroom. There's some aloe vera in a tube there. All right, folks. There you go. Well, this Sunday is Memorial Weekend. I don't know. Does Father's Day ever fall on Memorial Weekend? I don't think so. It's June 20th, says Scott Allen. There it is. There's your aloe vera gel. You can get Mom to put some of that on your shoulder for you. All right. Whew. Let's get back into it. Where was I? What was I talking about? I don't even remember. My kids, you heard it all last night if you were here. So there you go. All right. Enoch was the father of Methuselah. And if you remember, Methuselah was supposed to be the oldest man in the Bible. He lived to be 969 years old. But Enoch was kind of a youngster compared to him. He only lived to be about 365 years old. Hence the number of days in the solar year. Now, which would be very interesting because we remember when we talked about Enoch and the pyramid and the original languages and so on, original language, that Enoch, it is said, was the first man to be given weights and measures and to know how to use them. And so it's very interesting. There is speculation that he was the architect of the Tower of Babel, that he was the architect of the Great Pyramid of Cheops, and so on. We covered all that stuff. But of Enoch, we're told twice in the Bible that he walked with God. That's Genesis 5:22 and 24. And although Enoch didn't live long enough by the standards of his times, he did die. He was simply removed to heaven. Or he didn't die. He was simply removed to heaven. Spiritually relocated. Or to use a precise but today unusual meaning of the word, translated. And so each of the other descendants of Adam, whose lineage described in Genesis 5, were told that he died. But of Enoch, however, we're told that he was no more, for God took him. Or in the New English Bible translation, Enoch was seen no more because God had taken him away. That's very interesting. This just came to mind. I think of a way back, Charles Swindoll used to do. I think he still has his stuff on Christian radio, but he was a Christian, not a televangelist or a radio evangelist. He was the pastor of a church, and they had a program on Christian radio that would broadcast his sermons and his teachings. And he put out books and stuff and tapes that you could buy and all of that tapes. It tells you how long ago that was. The early 80s was when I used to listen to him a lot. And he was a fantastic minister, great teacher. He had a very personable style. And I believe he's still alive today, but he was, probably in his 50s or 60s 30 years ago. So if he's still alive, he's probably up there. So he had a series that he talked on, and one of his messages in the series was about Enoch, and he broke down the text of that verse of Genesis 5:24. It says Enoch walked with God, and then he disappeared because God took him away. But before that, I want you to see something here. This is very interesting. This is aside from what I was going to talk about in full about Enoch tonight, but I think it's worth looking at. This is, you look at Genesis 5, and this is the account from Adam to Noah. And it starts out and says, "This is the written account of Adam's family line. When God created mankind, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them. And he named them mankind when they were created. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. After Seth was born, Adam lived 800." You see, they skipped Cain and Abel. Adam lived 800 years after that and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Adam lived a total of 930 years, and then he died. When Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enoch. After he became the father of Enoch, Seth lived another 807 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Seth lived a total of 912 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 90 years, he became the father of Kenan. And after he became the father of Kenan, Enoch lived another 815 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 905 years, and then he died. When Kenan had lived 70 years, a youngster, basically a kid at that point, he became the father of Mahalalel. And after he became the father of Mahalalel, Kenan lived 840 more years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Kenan lived a total of 910 years, and then he died. When Mahalalel lived 65 years, even younger than his dad, he started having the little whoopee and making babies. He became the father of Jared. And after he became the father of Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Mahalalel lived a total of 895 years, and then he died. And when Jared lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. Now, if you look at the book of Enoch, it says, in the days of Jared, all of these things were happening, that the watchers came down, the 200 prefects from heaven, and set foot on Mount Hermon. And so when Jared lived 162 years, he had become the father of Enoch. And after he became the father of Enoch, Jared lived 800 more years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Jared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. Now, it's just giving us the firstborn. And if you notice, when it went all the way back to Adam, like I've said before, it didn't use Cain as the firstborn or Abel. It skipped them both and it moved to Seth, because Abel was murdered and Cain, of course, was the outcast who was not of pure human blood, but the blood of mixed Elohim and human blood. And we've gone into that many times before. So now here's the verse. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, for God took him away. Now that's the verse. It says here, there was an interesting thing. This is why I brought up Chuck Swindoll. He said, when Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. And after he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God for 300 years. Now, there was something very implicit in the language, and this isn't at all the more esoteric lesson I was getting at. This was more a devotional type of a message that Chuck Swindoll had preached, but it was the first time I had heard it put this way. It was in my post-seminary days that I heard this. And he said, it's very interesting. Look at the wording in this. It says that Enoch lived 65 years and had Methuselah, fathered Methuselah, his firstborn son. And then it says, and after Methuselah was born, what happened? Enoch walked with God faithfully for 300 years. And then so much so that God took him. And And the point that Swindoll was making is he was talking to fathers in this message. And he said, what's going to turn a dad's heart more to God than anything other than seeing your firstborn kid born? And he said, this is what happened to Enoch. He said, Enoch gave birth to his son. And he says, I don't think it's any mistake that in the passage in the Hebrew, it says, after his son was born, Enoch walked with God and became faithful with God. So I think that that's very cool. I think that's a very interesting, salient point to be made about Enoch. And so much so that God took him. And now, but when he took him, there's more stuff. So Enoch died at 30 years old and 5 months old. Not sure what you're getting at there, Doug. What did I miss? I think there is a theory about the longevity of some of these characters. Now, do we have substantiation of the longevity of human life prior to this time? I don't think we do. The Bible mentions it. I don't think we have it anywhere else. But at the time of the flood, it says that man's years were reduced to about 120 years. And so there is a theory, a scientific theory that's based on the water canopy that circled the earth. They're saying that at that time, prior to the flood, that there had been no rainfall, that the earth was mostly tropical, poles included, and that you really didn't see this full sunshine. You didn't see the blue sky. You saw the hazy firmament and the hazy sun, like a thick, humid day. And that the firmament or the sky was covered with a vapor canopy. And that this blocked the UV rays of the sun. And that people lived a lot longer. And there's a lot of other things that happen on the earth because of that. And during the flood, it says that the vapor canopy was broken and the heavens unloaded all this moisture. And where it said it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And this is perhaps an explanation for why things happen the way they did during the flood time. But it's also an interesting theory. And I know there's scientific data that seems to back this up in the chronology of the earth and so on. And so people would have lived older because they didn't have the decay from the UV rays of the sun. And so I think it's very interesting. So I'll have to take a look into that a little bit more. But so now it talks about Enoch. He was no more because God took him. Now, this is the basis for the authorship of the book of Enoch. And it's to this guy that the authorship is attributed in the pseudepigraphic text. And it's from there that we learn that Enoch, what Enoch saw when he was translated to heaven. And actually, there are 3 different books of Enoch in the pseudepigrapha. We talked about some of these the other day. Designated 1 Enoch, 2 Enoch, and 3 Enoch. And Enoch was obviously an inspiration for the kind of apocalyptic visions described in these books. 2nd and 3rd Enoch are much later compositions, and we aren't going to really focus on that in this particular lesson. When we speak of the book of Enoch, we're going to talk about 1st Enoch, or the book of Enoch 1. And so the book of Enoch holds this special fascination because its main themes, the last judgment and the Son of Man, the resurrection and the life to come, form this theological as well as a literary historical bridge between the historical scriptures and the New Testament. And so 1st Enoch has survived for the most part only in Ge'ez, or Ge'ez, G-E'-E-S, the language of Ethiopia, or Ethiopic, as it's also called. And for that reason, 1st Enoch is sometimes referred to as the Ethiopian Enoch. And so in some copies of the Ethiopian Bible, the book of Enoch is not only included in the canon, but it's the first book of the Bible, preceding Genesis. And this is some indication of the esteem which has been held by the Ethiopian fathers over the millennia of this book. But it was obviously highly regarded by some early Christians as well. There's an entire verse from Enoch that's quoted in the New Testament letter of Jude. Look at Jude 14 and 15, and Jude is only 1 chapter. So it's just the verses. Jude says, Samson went down to Timnah, where a Philistine girl caught his eye. And when he got home, he told his father and mother, a Philistine girl in Timnah has caught my eye. Now get her for my wife. But his father and mother said, that doesn't sound right. I don't know if I'm at the right spot there. Jude found himself, here, let's look it up. Jude 14 through 15. All right, let's take a look at that. Jude 14 through 15. Yeah, there was a wrong reference that came up there. Jude 14 and 15 says, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. Quote, see, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness, and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. That's Jude 14 and 15. And so this was quoted in the New Testament, and which the book of Jude was written in the 1st century, so AD. And so Jude himself, writing at a time when the canon of the New Testament had not closed or been finally determined, regarding the book of Enoch as inspired scripture. And so for him, the book of Enoch had authority of scripture. And this suggests that it was once regarded by ancient rabbis, regarded by the followers of Jesus as scripture among the early church, and perhaps in Asia Minor, to which the Epistle of Jude was originally addressed. And so many church fathers also were inspired by the book of Enoch. They regarded it highly. Now, we're talking about the literalist Orthodox Catholic Church, which I haven't had very good things to say about that literalist Orthodox Church, especially in regard to the Gnostics and the mystics and so on. But many of the church fathers were also inspired by Enoch. They regarded it highly. Beginning in the 4th century AD, the book of Enoch seems to have fallen into disfavor. There are references to it and quotations from it in the writings of the church fathers, and they're no longer found after the 4th century. And it apparently went out of the general circulation, went out of church vogue, probably was suppressed as heretical. And this is suggested by the fact that parts of it survived only among heretical Christian sects. And so for sects, not sex, sects, not X. And so, for example, the sacred books of the Maccabees include the book of the Giants, which is taken from the book of Enoch. The Manichaeans, I'm sorry. And so the entire book of Enoch wasn't discovered until 1773, when it was brought from Abyssinia, that's Ethiopia, to Europe by the Scottish traveler James Bruce. And so we really can't explain why this important book of ancient Judaism has survived as a whole only in the Ethiopian canon of the Bible. Nor are we sure by what strange accident of history the book of Enoch was originally brought to Ethiopia. Some have suggested it was brought to Ethiopia by missionaries from Alexandria, and they're credited with the converting of the Ethiopian royal family to Christianity in 330 AD. And so the Ethiopian monarchy, incidentally, traces its origins to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And it's more probable that it was brought to Abyssinia, that's Ethiopia, by Syrian Christian heretics. They were refugees from the decrees of the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD, just like the Council of Nicaea, which began under Constantine. This is a later council, about 110, 120 years later. And they introduced the banned book of Enoch into the Ethiopian church. And of course, you get all this mythology about the Ethiopian church holding the Ark of the Covenant, that they have the actual Ark of the Covenant. Who knows? We don't know if that's true or not. Let's see. What's everybody saying here? Do you ever feel like the older you get, the more you feel like you're going back in time? Maybe a little bit, Johan. I know my mind likes to go there a lot. Was it one of the books said to be for the several churches in the East, says Iowa X, in the Orient. Might be. I don't think so specifically off the top of my head. And Johan, by the way, welcome. Iowa X, welcome to the show. Glad you're here tonight. And even though we've technically only got 11 minutes left, let's just carry on a bit and see where we get here. And what else we got going on? David Castle, good to see you, brother. Greetings and favor to you. Are we, I know a lot of you guys come in very regularly, like 15 minutes before the end of the show. Is it a time thing? I don't care. You come in when you want to come in. I'm glad you're here. I'm just curious. I've thought that a couple of times. We got this whole group of people that show up about 10 to 15 minutes before the show is over every night. And so I hope I don't put up the wrong times, or you're all just getting here early, thinking you're early, and it's actually almost an hour late. So, hey, Amanda B., good to see you. And it doesn't matter to me. I'm just happy you're here. So now there was a discovery of Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch that pushed back its antiquity to at least 200 BC. Now, I want to tell you something. While there is a book that dates back into the pseudepigrapha, there is also so much in there that seems to go back much, much further. As a matter of fact, as you saw in the book of Genesis, which was a book written by Moses in about 1400 BCE, he doesn't quote Enoch, but he gives you what looks like it's something that's been lifted out of the book of Enoch when he talks about the Nephilim, the Watchers and the Nephilim. It looks like it would be, if you were writing a term paper for school, it would look like clear plagiarization that you find in the book of Genesis. And so if the book of Enoch or parts of it or ideas from it already existed 1400 years before the time of Christ, and they say it's only was authored in 200 BCE, you're looking at a copy that was made just like the rest of the Old Testament was rewritten at a certain time. And I think that's what happened with the book of Enoch, because you have evidences of it existing prior to, hold on, I got cords are all over here starting to fall apart on my desk, underneath my desk. So I'm stepping on the wrong thing because everybody moves my stuff around. And that's how my internet gets unconnected. So I believe it's a much older book. The Ethiopic manuscripts of Enoch are late, and scholars were initially quite understandably skeptical of the book's genuine antiquity. And then in 1886, there was substantial fragments of Enoch in Greek were found near Giza in Egypt. And the fragments were one part of 3-section papyrus scroll found in a Christian grave. The other 2 sections contained parts of the apocryphal Gospels of Peter and the Apocalypse of Peter, and all 3 sections of this composite papyrus have to do, at least in part, with the theme of life after death, a fact that perhaps accounts for their presence in a Christian burial. You take a little piece and they go, well, this talks about life, and so we're going to rip that off, and we're going to put that in your grave with you, because it talks about the life after death. In 1930, additional Greek fragments of Enoch were identified in papyrus collections now in the United States and the Republic of Ireland. And the Greek fragments have been dated on paleographical grounds, that is, by the forms of the letters, to the 4th century AD. So these were copies, Greek fragments, copies that were made in the 400s AD, just by the style of the lettering. They can tell, and they can date it. And I don't think you had guys in the 200s sitting back there and try to copy a style of 400s. There was no reason for it back then. And so I think Enoch is a much older book anyway, and the copies probably date to the time of the Septuagint. So then in 1952, it was discovered that fragments of Enoch in Aramaic, the vernacular in Judea at the time of Jesus, were among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so previously, scholars had demonstrated that the Greek texts of Enoch were translations. This was now corroborated by comparison with the overlapping Aramaic texts from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so comparisons of the Ethiopic with the Greek writing and the Aramaic shows equally clearly that the Ethiopic is a tertiary version. It goes back to the Greek, which in turn translated the Aramaic. And so this chain of tradition clearly demonstrates the antiquity of Enoch. This is fascinating history. Now, it's not something that blows your mind up, but it's something when you look at it and you go, this is really cool. When you can date something through the kind of language it was written in, when they would have interpreted things, and that the text is actually a translation from a different language, because there's another version in another language that translates the same thing. And so altogether, there's 11 identifiable fragments of Aramaic texts from the Dead Sea Caves. And they've been sorted out, and each one comes from a separate manuscript of an Aramaic Enoch. And by the way, you know the Dead Sea Scrolls are nowhere near complete. There is so much of that has not been unraveled yet, so much that has not been taken apart and studied. It's, I think, a greater portion than what we already have. And so maybe these things will turn up even more. And so the fragments have been dated on paleographical evidence as well as by orthography, that is, by a consideration of the spelling of words. The oldest fragments date to the 3rd or the 2nd century BC, the latest to the 1st century BC. And as already noted, comparison of the Greek with the overlapping Aramaic texts by a detailed coalition of two demonstrates the dependence of the Greek on the Aramaic. So by that, we know that the Ethiopic Enoch, which we have to rely on for a relatively complete text, is a translation from the Greek, which is a translation from the Aramaic. So the Aramaic came first, then the Greek, and then the translation that you find in Ethiopic. So does a Hebrew Enoch lie behind the Aramaic? Hebrew fragments related to the parallel to Enoch, or possibly of Enoch itself. Was the book originally written in Hebrew? Enoch was found at Qumran in Cave 1, so there may have been a Hebrew Enoch before or contemporaneous with the Aramaic book, but the Hebrew fragments are too slight for any conclusions to be drawn in their relation to the Aramaic text. And everything else points to the Aramaic as the original book of Enoch. And so in any event, we've been able to trace at least sections of the book of Enoch back to about 200 BCE. Since the work is a composite containing a number of sections, it's not possible to give a single date for the entire composition. And different parts come from different periods and from different authors. And the final recension of the bulk of the book of Enoch, with the exception of the parables, that's chapters 37 through 71 if you're following that, was probably completed in the 2nd century BCE, but it incorporated much older material. And now I see it's 9:57. Do I dare dig deeper? Hey, Teresa, thank you for that. It's very nice. I appreciate that. $4.99. Thank you very much. And I appreciate that. That helps the cause here. So let's see. Jude and 2 Peter, 2 New Testament books. They warn against sexual indulgence, but only Enoch spells out how the punishment fits the crime. And so don't let the pseudepigrapha scare you. That's something I wanted to dig into a little bit tonight as well. And maybe we'll hit it tomorrow night when we take up more of this. But it describes how at one point the New Testament epistle of Jude actually quotes from the book of Enoch. But Enoch's influence in Jude, as we'll see, is really far more pervasive, and it illustrates how the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament and the pseudepigrapha are all tied together textually, with the latter forming a kind of bridge between what Christians call the Old Testament and the New Testament. And why is this important? If you're not of Christian or Jewish faith, who cares? It's important because as we study history, we study the history of religion. You look at the Abrahamic religions and their hold over the world today. Their sway over mankind for centuries, for 2,000 years. There is the big question of its importance. And so it's important to know some of these things. So the second epistle is attributed to Peter, 2 Peter. The book is 2 Peter in the New Testament. Didn't you guys ever go to Sunday school? Said Indiana Jones. And 2 Peter depends heavily on the book of Jude. Jude depending heavily on the book of Enoch, which is not part of the canon of Scripture. So in this derivative way, 2 Peter also depends on Enoch in the parallel passages of the letters of Jude and 2 Peter. If you are somebody who is Christian or who likes to read your Bible, your New Testament, read the books of Jude and read the books of 2 Peter and see what you glean from them. Read Jude first, because Jude, a very short book, is very Enochian. And then 2 Peter is a book that's pretty much based on the book of Jude. And so the overriding concern voiced in Jude and in 2 Peter is the danger to their churches of a perverted form of Christian belief, which claimed that all that was necessary was to have faith. And this perverted belief held that whoever had faith was above all law, and called antinomianism. Antinomianism. There you go. Hard to say. This is a position that was libertarianism, so to speak. And it took the form mainly of sensuality and sexual indulgence, saying, hey, you live by faith, you're saved by faith, you're going to heaven by faith, your faith is strong, it doesn't matter what you do. Now, Jude and 2 Peter admonish and even threaten the godless sinners, quote unquote, who succumb to this belief and its accompanying lusts, some of whom have been infiltrated, or as the New English Bible translates it in Jude 4, wormed in their way into. They wormed their way into. They infiltrated. And the churches to whom the epistles of Jude and 2 Peter are addressed. And as Jude describes it, these godless sinners have turned the grace of God into licentiousness. That's Jude 4. And 2 Peter tells us that many will follow their licentiousness, and because of them, the way of the truth will be reviled. That's 2 Peter 2:2. And so the authors of Jude and 2 Peter describe at length the fate that is to befall these godless sinners. And in short, their fate is to be like the angels, the sons of God, who sinned by descending from heaven and having intercourse with the daughters of men. And this is a reference to the episode described in Genesis 6:1-4, which I believe were not angels at all. They were Elohim because of the language used, and we've been through that 100 times. And so just before the story of Noah and the flood. And so this episode may have been the final straw that resolved God to bring the flood upon mankind. And according to Genesis, when men began to multiply on the earth and the sons of God saw how beautiful the daughters of men were and came down to sleep with them, the resulting children were giants, the mighty men of old. Genesis continues with God's recognition of the wickedness of men and his decision to visit the flood upon the earth. But it really had nothing to do, as we saw last week, and I've talked about many times before, had nothing to do with why the flood was there. The flood was there because of the wickedness brought to mankind, not of mankind. But the Genesis story doesn't indicate that the sons of God who descended to sleep with the daughters of men were punished. Yet both Jude and 2 Peter tell us that their punishment was severe, and that this punishment would befall the licentious heretics, the godless sinners who were infiltrating the church. Remember, I've talked to you many, many, many times. Talk about Psalm 82 as being the other passage where the Elohim are mentioned. And it goes like this, Psalm 82. It says, God presides in the great assembly. He renders judgment among the gods. So Elohim stood in the midst of the Elohim. It says in older versions, And Elohim, God, singular, says, how long will you defend the unjust and show partiality to the wicked? Defend the weak and the fatherless. Uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. The gods know nothing. The Elohim know nothing. They understand nothing. They walk about in darkness, and the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, and this is God speaking, I said, you are gods, or Elohim. You are the sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere mortals. You will fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, and judge the earth, for all the nations are your inheritance. And that's Psalm 82. And this is where God is wreaking justice or revenge upon the Elohim who fell. And so getting back to this whole thing on Enoch here now, it says, Jude states, I desire to remind you that the angels who did not keep their own position but left their proper dwelling have been kept by him, God, in eternal chains in the nether gloom until the judgment of the great day. And these are the fallen angels who fell with Satan or with Lucifer in the wars in heaven. And these angels acted immorally, and as the New English Bible translated, committed fornication and followed unnatural lusts. And they paid the penalty in eternal fire, an example for all to see. That's in Jude 7. I think that that's a stretch in the book of Jude, because I don't believe they were angels at all. So he's speaking of the angels, not necessarily of the watchers who came down and intermingled with the daughters of men. So the New English Bible says they committed fornication and followed unnatural lusts, and they paid the penalty in eternal fire, an example for all to see. Similarly, 2 Peter says, if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to the pits of nether gloom to be kept until the judgment, then the Lord knows how to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, and especially those who indulge in the lust of defiling passion. So this is all, I think, stuff that has been reworked to justify the sexual prohibitions. And so nothing there in the text of Enoch, the text of these two books, suggests that he's talking about, that they are talking about these magistrates, these prefects, these watchers who came from heaven and intermingled with the daughters of men. It's talking about fallen angels. When did the angels fall? During the wars in heaven, which were supposed to have taken place prior to the creation of mankind. And God cast them down to the earth, and some to hell. And so the Bible account, it says, the biblical account says nothing of the angel's punishment. And for this, we have to turn to the book of Enoch. The account in Enoch is far more complete. It says this, and it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, in those days there were born to them beautiful and comely daughters. And watchers, this is Enoch's technical name for the Elohim, the children of heaven, saw them and desired them and lusted after them. And by the way, Enoch never mentions the Hebrew word for angel, which is malach, and uses Elohim. And the children of heaven saw them and desired them, lusted after them. And they said to one another, come and let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of earth, and let us beget children. And these leaders and all the rest of the 200 watchers took for themselves wives from all whom they chose, and they began to cohabit with them. And they defiled themselves with them. And they taught them sorcery and spells, and showed them the cutting of roots and herbs. And they became pregnant by them, and bore great giants of 3,000 cubits. And there were not born upon the earth offspring, which grew to this strength. And these devoured the entire fruits of men's labor, and men were unable to sustain them. Then the giants treated them violently and began to slay mankind. Then the Most High said, and the great Holy One spoke up and sent Sariel to the son of Lamech, saying, Go to Noah and say to him in my name, hide yourself, and show him the end that is approaching, and the earth will be completely destroyed, and tell him that a deluge is about to come on the whole earth to destroy all things from the face of the earth. And to Gabriel the Lord said, Go, Gabriel, to the giants, their bastard offspring, the children of fornication, and destroy those sons of the watchers from among the sons of men. Muster them for battle, and send them one against the other. Now, if angels, by the way, we're told in the Bible that they're sexless. So angels could not have bequeathed the Nephilim. It was the watchers, the Elohim, the sons of God. And the Lord said to Michael, Go, Michael, make it known to Shemhaza and the others who were with him. These are part of the prefects that came from heaven. The watchers were united with the daughters of men to defile themselves and with them in their uncleanness. Bind them for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth until the great day of their judgment and the time of the end. Then they shall be dragged off to the fiery abyss in torment, and everyone who is consumed by lust from now on will be bound together with them. And at the fixed time of judgment which I shall judge, they shall all perish for the generations forever. And I, Enoch, was standing, blessing the Lord of majesty and the King of the ages. And behold, the watchers, the angels, the sons of God. This is in parentheses, by the way. Angels are sons of God. Angels or sons of God. These are the sons of God, not angels, who were now fearful of punishment. Of the great Holy One were calling me and saying to me, Enoch, scribe of righteousness, go declare to the watchers of heaven who have left the high heaven and the holy eternal sanctuary and have defiled themselves with women. And they themselves do as the children of earth do and have taken to themselves wives. Say this, you have wrought great destruction on the earth, and you shall have no peace or forgiveness. And inasmuch as they delight in their children, the slaughter of their beloved ones shall they see, and over the destruction of their children they shall lament, and make supplication without end, but they shall have neither mercy nor peace. Bam! Pretty powerful, nasty stuff for these watchers coming down and shagging human women, loving them, cohabiting with them, teaching them skills. This was apparently forbidden. So in a dream or a vision, Enoch is asked by the angels or the watchers to write prayers for them and to intercede for them, and he does so. But God rejects the prayer of Enoch and the petition submitted by the angels. It says, but in a vision it was revealed to me, says Enoch, that for as much as your petition will not be granted to you all the days of eternity, sentence will be made final by decree upon you, that from now on you shall no longer ascend to heaven throughout all the ages, and it's been ordered to bind you in the bonds in the earth for all the days of eternity. That's Enoch 14, 4-5. That's pretty heavy-duty stuff. So thus we can't appreciate the reference, the threat to heretics in Jude and 2 Peter without the account of Enoch, because they're mimicking what Enoch said in the pseudepigraphal book, which was written to really, remember the pseudepigrapha when we were talking about Eve? The books that appeared in those texts were there to degrade Eve, and they basically degraded Eve as the originator of sin among mankind, which she was not. So, and it's only in Enoch do we learn how the watchers, the angels, the sons of God, who cavorted with the daughters of men, were punished. But there's more than this. The relationship demonstrates how the New Testament authors were influenced by books like Enoch. And indeed, here in Jude and in 2 Peter, as we've noted, they clearly regard Enoch as authoritative, as sacred scripture. That's how the New Testament writers saw them. And tomorrow we're going to get into which came first, the passages in Genesis or the book of Daniel or Enoch. Talk about Enoch's visions. Include a tempestuous heaven, a vernal paradise, and a hell that incorporates Old Testament and Greek traditions. And we're going to talk about the last judgment in Enoch with its new heaven. It anticipates the New Testament's world to come. We're going to talk about controversial passages in Enoch that presage descriptions of the Christian Messiah. And so we're going to look at all this stuff because I think this is really, really interesting stuff about Enoch. And so there you have it, folks. That's as far as we got tonight. And so tomorrow we'll look at some other stuff, some really cool stuff, I think, with the book of Enoch. And Susie says, someday I will great spirit. He will be the God King and I will be his daughter. That's interesting, Susie. I'm curious, Susie, not mocking, not questioning, so on, other than asking a question, I guess, is what makes you believe that? I'm curious about that. That someday you will great spirit. He will be the God King and I will be his daughter. Where does that come from? Is that something that was revealed to you personally? Is it something that's written? Is there a source on that? Is it just a feeling? Is it something that you can back up with the way you think? I'm just curious about that. When I see somebody like you make a statement like that, I want to know. You've been hanging with a shaman in training. Okay. So where does he get his material? I'm curious to know. I like to ask questions when and Susie, this is in no way an indictment of what you just said. It's just the way I think. When I hear a shaman tell me this is what's been revealed to me, or I've channeled this, or I've been given this message, I'm like, Jesus said the same thing. So the prophets said the same thing. Mohammed said the same thing. So who do we believe? Is it just picking and choosing who you want? How do we know that shaman? How do we know that Jesus? How do we know that Mohammed or that any of the prophets were right or wrong? That's the big question. Life experience and native, says Susie. So reveals very recently. So it's interesting stuff. I'd love to hear more about it, actually. So we are the phallus, for we ejaculate our spirit into the cosmos when we meet our true ineffable self, says Slightly Slanted Sleuth. That's an interesting way to put it. I've never quite seen it put that way before, but that's interesting stuff. I'd like to know more about what you think about that. And the Great Spirit is used by Native Americans, Matthew. Johan says, I try not to judge people who decide to get the jab. It doesn't change my love for them. We're talking about the vaccines. I don't judge people either on that. I just don't happen to accept it the same way they do. So there you go. Well, thank you, Teresa. We'll talk some more about this tomorrow, guys. And so I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for giving me your time. I wish I had the gumption and the oomph to do this an hour and a half to 2 hours every night. Because I know, God knows, 20 years ago, I would go into Irk and Merk chats, if you know what those are. And I loved just chatting with people. And there usually wasn't a radio show playing, but the more that I got involved with certain groups, it was always fun to chat with people. And so I try to leave the chat up as long as YouTube will leave it up. And so you guys can keep chatting if you want to when I end this. And so I want to thank you for being here. And I want to say, you know what? I appreciate you. If you're not a member of this channel, please go hit the join button. And that's $2 a month, $5 a month, $15 a month gets you different levels of participation. And you can see what those are by hitting the join button down below. This will still be up. You can hit the join button when we're done. You can all sit over in the chat room for a little while when we're done and keep chatting until it shuts itself off. So I want to thank you for being here again. And you know what, folks? Live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.